you know, my impression of the annual meeting so far is very high marks. I've really enjoyed it, learned a lot, and you know, it's great to hear everybody. It's great to see everybody. And you know, in today's meeting, I see we'll be hearing from STEMSEAS and the MATE programs, and I see those as really important access points to us for diversity, improving diversity in our sciences, ocean sciences, but geosciences largely. You know, geosciences is, of all the STEM fields, geosciences is the least diverse. You know, it's hard to figure out why, but that's the way it is. So I see the young people coming in through STEMSEAS and MATE as you know, opportunities for making some headway there. And then the cyber infrastructure, this satellite advisory group and HiSeasNet, all important for providing us secure, uniform, and stable connectivity at sea. So I really appreciate all the action and efforts on the part of those people. So I look forward to hearing from them all. So let's go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Dennis. Good afternoon to all. Thanks for joining us again. Just a reminder, we're not going to be getting together this Wednesday this week because of RV Tech, which is ongoing, thanks to the great work of many people. So this is the only session we will have this week. Anyway, moving right ahead, we're going to start with STEMSEAS with Sharon Cooper, and I'm not sure, hopefully Jonathan Lewis will join us as well. It's a great program. So Sharon, take it away.
Thanks. So I'm Sharon Cooper, and John Lewis, my co-PI, is here on the call also. So he has carte blanche to interrupt me at any time. And thank you for having us today. Okay, next slide, please. So 2021, we did not have a lot of programming going on. Most of the year, we're waiting for quarantine requirements to be lifted when appropriate. But we were thinking about it a lot. And in August, we actually did, I was out in the Seattle area, and I was able to meet with Doug and Brandy, actually on a boat, on a small boat of a friend of ours, a colleague of ours. And you know what, Doug, I realized I didn't take a picture of our meeting, but I took a picture from the boat that we were meeting on. So that's that little picture right there. That's part of my family. That's in Bainbridge Island. Anyway, but we sat together and we were able to talk about what possibilities there are for us to do anything in 2021 and 2022 to do some planning for 2022. So we did identify a good match transit on the Thompson that we could do this November, which is coming up. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing with that. So yeah, if you could go ahead to the next slide. So we're really determined to get STEMSEAS back to sea. There's a lot of extra hoops to jump through now with all the COVID travel restrictions and protocols, but we're determined to make it happen. I know that science cruises have been going out, so we thought now finally we could have a chance to get STEMSEAS back out to sea. So we adapted our model a little bit. So once we identified the Thompson as a good match in terms of length and location for us, it's going from Seattle to San Diego. We've been working with the operators on what is required for that. We talked about what the shelter-in-place requirements are. And after talking with them, we decided that to simplify things, we would limit our recruitment pretty much solely to community colleges in the Seattle area so that they would all be local to the port. We put on our application that they need to be vaccinated and they needed to agree to the shelter-in-place protocols. And we didn't know what would happen. We haven't done it this way before, but we put it out there. We recruited specifically through those colleges with contacts that we had there. And we did get a lot of interest. We got way more applications than we could actually take students. So that was good to see. So we ended up with we've got 13 students, 2 mentors who are from the community colleges that we recruited from. And we have 2 TAs that are experienced with STEMSEAS who have sailed before and will be able to help along with all the students, introducing them to everything and being the go-betweens between the mentors. The students are from Bellevue College, from Seattle Central, and from North Seattle College. And so they're in little cohorts, so they'll be able to support each other. Because of the timing, this is scheduled to go out November 8th, 9th, 10th. The schedule's shifting a little bit, but it is in the middle of their quarter. So we wanted them to be in groups so they could support each other academically, and that it would be the exciting experience it is, but not take away from their success academically. So they're together in groups to help each other. And our planning is underway now. We're collaborating with Ginger Arborist group. So there are a bunch of them sailing on the transit down to San Diego because they're on the follow-on cruise going out of San Diego. So that's all happening right now. We are awaiting instructions on the exact date that the transit will be going out. Thompson is undergoing some maintenance things right now. But we're very excited that I think it's actually going to happen. So getting everybody back out to sea has been a goal of ours this whole year. And I do have to shout out to the operator at UW because they have been really amazing to work with. Okay, next slide. So looking to 2022, we're waiting for more of the schedules to be uploaded into the MFP system. I've been looking through it a little bit, trying to identify what can work for STEMSEAS for a full schedule for 2022. So keeping our eye on that so we can get applications coming out for 2022 as soon as possible. We would like to integrate telepresence more regularly into our cruises where possible. We did have a chance to use telepresence and virtual experiences, a little bit more than we had before, of course, in 2020. And we'd like to integrate that side by side with our in-person programs. And then John and I are working on submitting a new proposal for continuation of STEMSEAS for about 4 more years from NSF. So that's where we are at. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so that's the STEMSEAS story for now, and I'd be happy to take any questions, or John, if there's anything I left out, feel free to jump in.
The only thing that I would like to kind of amplify that Sharon mentioned is that last year, UNOLS was incredibly supportive and energetic about trying to do things differently and virtually, taking advantage of the telepresence. And we did some limited activities last year, and you all heard about that. We sort of think that there's some amazing opportunities to sail students from communities that we don't see participating in geoscience or oceanography frequently, for example, from tribal colleges. And we kind of imagine leveraging relationships, for example, with UAF and some of the communities, colleges in the region, wherein we have students and maybe mentors from a campus that go to sea and are able to do a ship-to-shore connection with some of the students in the classroom, because we find those experiences to be really powerful. And you have connections to the folks who are on the vessel, and we think that could be particularly impactful for communities that we haven't seen participating. So we want to continue to think about that and leverage those things if possible. And of course, the PIs in the UNOLS family are the ones on the ground who have these connections that we might be able to think about moving forward. So, spread the word. And again, thank you for all of your efforts, which couldn't have done any of this without you all. So we appreciate it very much.
I'd like to mention that Ginger Armbrust, this is her first association with STEMSEAS, and she's pretty excited about the whole thing and how it's all coming together. So it's pretty neat, those connections you guys make.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that. Yeah. And we have new hats.
Nice.
Great. Any other questions from anyone?
Well, thanks for your patience and as well as persistence, Sharon and John. You do a great job. And I know it's been tough to deal with, the pandemic and limiting your opportunities to get to see, but we appreciate that you've been just sticking with us and keep working with us until we get openings to get out there. And now it's starting to finally open up again. So it's great. With that, we're going to shift over to Maria, who's going to talk to us about the MATE program, which is also a very important program.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. You can all hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. All right.
Let's get in there. There you go.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon. everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to present today and give you this update on our program. It's really nice to be a part of this event, as always. For those of you who don't know me, who might be new, my name is Maria Oshadach. I'm the coordinator for the Mate at Sea internship program. And our program is run by the Marine Advanced Technology Education Center, which is in Monterey Peninsula College, located on the California Central Coast. And Deidre Sullivan is our program director. Next slide, please. So to brief you on the challenges and changes in our program, as you all know, COVID has had an immense impact on our program. You may remember that in 2020, most of our internships were canceled and some were converted to land-based or dockside work. In 2021, I announced in May that MATE was prepared to fund more land-based opportunities, and we did get some interest with land-based, not as much, of course, as at-sea internships, but also in July, NSF gave us permission to place 3 interns on board the RV in Atlantis. So in total for 2021, we had 4 internships that were completed. 1 was land-based and 3 was at sea. And I'm going to introduce those interns in just a moment. But I also want to announce that we are really excited about planning for a full year of internships in 2022. So I'm currently working on that. We've adapted our program to meet new requirements, including posting an announcement that has requirements listed for providing proof of vaccination and be willing to get tested for COVID, and perhaps even participate in quarantines before boarding the ships. And we're hoping to have 1 long-term internship in 2022, which will be about 6 months. Depending on the length of each, we're hoping for about 10 to 12 short-term internships. Those last between anywhere from 4 to 16 weeks each. I have reached out to marine tech managers and I'm getting a lot of interest so far. So some have already completed our host survey, and which the host survey tells me who's interested in hosting an intern and what the minimum requirements are for that. I'll be sharing more details about that also during the RV Tech meeting, because I'm going to present there as well this week. But if you have questions before then, anyone has questions, please let me know about that. Then our new announcement listing requirements and a link to our application is currently, I just posted it up on our website. And I'll be sharing that with you, Sharon, as well. So you can, hopefully pass it on to some of your STEMSEAS interns. I would appreciate it. If the next slide, please.
Nope. Come on.
Thank you.
We're in there.
No worries.
Well, come on. There it goes.
Oh, on it. Awesome. Okay. So one of my favorite parts of this presentation, of course, is to introduce our talented and very strong interns. We had 4 interns in 2021 that were hosted by HUI. Angeline DeLuca, pictured here. She completed a 12-week land-based internship working on the Alvin upgrade. She's a very experienced electronics technician who is currently working as a power generation technician. But as a result of her internship, she has expressed to me that she wants very much to transition to the marine engineering field and perhaps returning to HUI if the opportunity arises. And she's particularly interested in pursuing her QMET certification, and she's currently working on that while continuing her studies and working as a power generation technician at the same time. Next slide, please. And then we had 3 interns who completed the 5 to 6 week internships at sea on board the RV Atlantis. They were assisting with the midlife refit of the ship in preparation for the science verification cruise. And Cherise Figueroa is pictured here as one of those interns. She is, after finishing her internship, she went back to collecting marine species data with the Alaskan fisheries on the Bering Sea. She's doing that now, but she's also looking for work in the marine technical field and very interested in pursuing a career in that area as well. Next slide, please. The second intern who completed the internship on Atlantis is Grace Fulton, and I'm really happy, she's pictured here. I'm really happy to announce that she, after she completed her MATE internship, she has been hired to join the UNOLS tech pool. She'll be working on the Sally Ride as an eDNA sampling technician, conducting a pilot study. So congratulations to Grace. Next slide, please. And then our third intern on the Atlantis was Bella Lax. She has returned to the CSU Maritime Academy to finish her bachelor's. And she wants to work at sea in hydrographic surveying and is pursuing her certification as well as looking for work in the marine technical field. All four interns, worked very hard. They followed all the required procedures and including COVID protocols by providing proof of vaccination, getting tested, and they successfully completed their internships. So, I'm really pleased that was the case, in 2021. Next slide, please. I also want to, share with you a new development. Our NSF program director, Lisa Rom, she recently introduced Deidre and I to Dr. Liliana Montoya, who is the internship coordinator in the Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering Department at the U.S. Naval Academy. And Lisa asked us to explore potential options for MATE to assist placing Navy Academy students on board UNOLS vessels to complete 4-week internships. So we're looking for potential hosts for 1 or 2 internships in 2022 to see if the opportunities available are a good match for these students. Naval Academy students would ideally join cruises if they were selected that would be departing from continental US and that support science missions. They specifically asked for those requirements, and they would have to go on board ships to work as interns for 4 weeks during four specific summer term blocks that they have in their program that lasts between May and August. So it's a lot of requirements. We may or may not be able to match potential candidates, but we're going to see, what happens. I'm reaching out to the Marine Tech managers and see if anyone is interested in that. I think it's important to point out that Naval Academy students would be returning to school after completing those internships and, to complete their degrees. And they typically serve 5 years in the Navy or the Marine Corps after graduation. Having said that, these students are very qualified applicants with desirable skills and training and could potentially join the Marine workforce in the future, even though they are not likely to be applying for work, in UNOLS vessels right after their internships are completed. Also, I want to point out that the funding for this pilot program would be separate from MATE internship program and would not interfere with MATE internship placement. So if anyone is interested in learning more about this program, please, reach out to me and I would love to talk to you more about it. Next slide, please. So I want to express thanks, many thanks to the technicians and crew members that work with our interns. As I've said many times, the MATE at Sea internship program would not be possible without the dedication of such great mentors and role models. MATE values inclusivity and encourages participation of students from diverse backgrounds. So please, support hosting, consider hosting, share this information with others you think might be interested in hosting internships in 2022 and in the future. And, if, supporting internships, can provide, marine tech managers with some needed assistance, help promote marine technical careers, and give students that hands-on experience with cutting edge technologies that they don't get to experience in the classroom. And next slide, please. And in conclusion, I want to thank everyone at NSF and UNOLS for your support and for putting together these great meetings. And congratulations to UNOLS on the 50th anniversary. My contact information and the link to the host form used to request interns is on this slide. And you can contact me anytime with questions, but if anyone has any questions right now, please let me know. Thank you.
Maria, this is Dennis.
Hi.
Have your intern numbers grown lately? And that's one question. Is there a trend in numbers? And the other question is there a capacity within the community that will be met and no more would be able to be accommodated? What do the numbers look like?
Well, I can't say that our number. I'm sorry. Did you mean that applicants? Trend in increasing applicants or trend in increasing internships?
Internships, number one, and capacity of the community that you're working with. What is that?
Yes. So I cannot say that we have necessarily increased in numbers of internships as far as completed internships but that's primarily due to COVID related restrictions and interruptions. But the interest is definitely there, and that's increased. And we have been, given permission to continue to extend our program. So we've been given an extension for 2022. And there's a lot of interest and encouragement in applying for a renewal in our grant. So hopefully, we can make that work in the future. And so when we do, we definitely will address the increase in capacity in the renewal of the grant. But for right now, the only thing that I can say is in 2022, we have the funding available to increase the number of interns as long as we don't have any, COVID-related interruptions that might get in the way of getting those interns on board cruises. And so we want to do a full year of internships. And of course, it's all, dependent on funding, continued funding. But it's been a really great program. It's been successful. We've had so much positive feedback and interest. So the potential for growth is definitely there.
Thank you.
Monty Graham had a question for you.
Yes.
Hey, it's just a quick comment. When you talk to the Naval Academy, make sure that they will use one of your blocks as one of their summer cruises. Otherwise, it needs to go in their vacation block. And there's a high unlikelihood that they will use their vacation for this.
Got it. Yes, we are working closely with Lily, the internship coordinator at the Naval Academy, to do just that. Make sure that we adhere to all of those requirements and and help match the requirements that Naval Academy has for their students as best as we can to the schedules of the cruises that are available and interested in hosting interns. So that's kind of, that's going to be the key, is being able to find, because internships depend very much on the schedule of the cruises. And so we're just hoping, that we have some good matches all around. Thank you, though. Thank you for the comment. Anything else?
Thanks, Maria. That was great. Appreciate
My
it. Thanks for all your great work. And glad you're going to get 4 interns out there this year, which is great.
Yeah.
Despite all the challenges. Hopefully 2022 is a breakout year again.
Yes. Thank you so much for your support.
Okay. Now we're going to shift gears. And next thing up for us is Lee Ellis going to talk to us about cyber infrastructure. The cyber infrastructure working group, which is Well, I'll let him explain it. He'll do a much better job than I ever will. So Lee, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Doug. Yep, I'm Lee Ellett with the presenting on the activities of the Cyber Infrastructure Working Group. Go next slide. So we put together this group. These are the main participants. There have been some folks that have come in and out to attend at times, but caught most of the regular attendees here. And the goal is to look at the trusted CI report and make recommendations for cyber infrastructure support and resources and cybersecurity needs of the fleet. So previously we've reported on the pilot program, and that's why I have Pam, Ken, and Scott's names in bold. They were the team that came together to support the pilot program. Pam was the lead. Ken provided technical input, and Scott at UH did the contracting for the vendor Peregrine that's been updating the supporting the cybersecurity activities in the fleet. Next slide, please. So a little bit just review of what are we trying to address, and so in some order of varying, 1 and 2 are very important with what was coming down on the ships, and that is the IMO requirements, the International Maritime Organization. The main thing is requiring inputting a cyber risk management plan for inspected vessels, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that occurred. Then we have DoD requirements. These are largely contracting issue with the DFARS, the Defense Acquisition Regulation supplements, and then what's coming is CMMC, this cybersecurity maturity model certification. Right now, from the U.S. Coast Guard, we're tracking things. These are some things that have been published. There's a strategic cyber outlook. They've published circulars on cyber threats, but there's nothing prescriptive in Coast Guard inspections, but there is support for the IMO requirements for inspected vessels. So, and then the National Science Foundation has cybersecurity requirements in the major facilities guide, as long as in addition to cyber infrastructure plan requirements. Next slide. So the background of the pilot program, it was successful. So the vessels passed their first inspections where this CRMP was a requirement, and then these will require continual improvement. Then we also had some activities with guided discussions with ONR, campus CISOs, campus contracting personnel, to get to the big concern was controlled unclassified information. So information that is not classified but is sensitive. And these are called out in the contracting terms for ONR vessels. So we looked at that and we talked to a lot of people and came to the determination that the CMMC Level One was a good baseline for the fleet to move forward. NSF continues to support a cybersecurity program is needed to address the needs of the ships. And I've got some updates on future plans coming up. So next slide, please. So during the pilot program, the vendor Peregrine supported aided each operator by providing custom CRMP documents in their SMS. They also, there's folks on not just IT but OT. So the ship needs and are a key part of this, the operational technology systems. And so the vendor also worked with each vessel. If they needed additional assistance, if they had specific needs, they were addressed to provide updates or extra support. So that worked very well. Next slide, please. This was early from the pilot program. The ships that were all the ships that were visited, engaged with, inspected vessels, uninspected vessels. It was all getting these cybersecurity needs met. Next slide. And talk a little bit about the timeline. So I'll just go. I think can we go? Sorry, I lost track here.
Which one would you like?
CMMC Level One.
There we go. Perfect. Sorry.
So CMMC Level One, this maturity model certification. Level One consists of 17 practices. It's the focus is safeguarding of the federal contract. It is the lowest of the levels. It is the most basic. It is the baseline. So that was why we one of the reasons we chose it, and where we think where the needs of the fleet land right now. It's CMMC overall is a mix of multiple frameworks, and it's about maturity of the cybersecurity plans. So it's a little bit about CMMC Level One. Next slide, please. A little bit about timeline. The Peregrine contract began in November 2020, and that's what was reported on this last annual meeting cycle that this was starting. We did some vendor presentations about what's next. This is a pilot program. So what are we doing after this the Peregrine contract that was put in place? And so we had vendor presentations, doing research at meetings, but we meet bi-weekly. And we did then in March, we were reviewing the CY requirements, DFAR 7012 requirements, and what CMMC is, what's coming with CMMC. And so ultimately decided to, during the contract, that Pam, Scott, and Ken talked to the vendor about and converted that to CMMC Level One, instead of we're looking at something more drastic with DFAR 7012 and CY. And then in November, the Peregrine contract will end. And through this work, we've got in place we're getting in place Scott is at a contract for Research SOC. That's Research Security Operations Center. And we can go to the next slide. I have more information on that. So Research SOC is who we'll be working with going into next year. It started as an NSF funded program. The idea is that this program supports scientific computing for NSF large facilities. There's several of the participants in the Trusted CI engagement that we did are involved with Research SOC. So some familiar names and faces there, but we're excited about having Research SOC on board going into next year. Next slide, please. So here's some of the statement of work that's going in starting in January of what we're going to be getting for the fleet as part of this to assist operators with cybersecurity is so 24/7 monitoring and alerting. So that's network monitoring, analyzing traffic, notifying if there's security events. Then with a vulnerability identification service, that's probing active machines, IP addresses and services that are ongoing for vulnerabilities. And then we have the third server here is this, instead of hiring a specific, that was one of the recommendations from the Trusted CI report is we need a CISO. Instead of, but we also have this, the UNOLS model doesn't fit that very well. So we've gotten so this is a virtual CISO service. So we have the POC will be Ryan Kaiser, who's going to present it at RV Tech. Ryan worked on the Trusted CI engagement. He'll be our POC, but there's multiple people that we can. So there's more support than just a single person. That's something that's attractive about this type of service. And then we have along with the CISO, there's a security team that can assist 24/7 if there's security events. And there's also participating with if there's a very serious event, there is a red phone service. But in general, the scope of these services for 1 year targeted accelerating the cybersecurity program within the ARF based on needs that were identified with the pilot program and creating all the cyber risk management plans. And that's all I have today. There's a, I didn't have a question slide, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Jim Hollick has a question for you, Lee, or a comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't know which hand to raise, so I raised both of them. I just wanted to mention that this research SOC engagement is co-funded between, Ocean Science and the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure at NSF. So it's a kind of it's a partnership, at least in the first year. And I think that's important that Ocean Science is drawing on the greater NSF Office of Cyber Infrastructure for this.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's a
Jim.
great aspect. Yeah.
Well, Lee, we appreciate the work that's been by the whole group and work put into this. We know it's pretty thankless work behind the scenes, and everybody's, oh my God, not just more of the cybersecurity stuff, but it's really important. And we appreciate that you guys have been working hard and working ahead steadily on this to get us where we need to be within the community. So thanks. And thanks for giving us a good update on it. Next, we're going to move on to we're going to get an update on the SatNAG satellite working group from Eric Grubel at URI.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Grubel at University of Rhode Island, here to present for the Satellite Network Advisory Group, SatNAG. Next slide. So who are we? It's Laura Stolp at Woods Hole, Ken Feldman at University of Washington, myself, and John Haverlack at the University of Alaska. Our mission statement is to steward the objective, effective, and efficient use of ship-to-shore network resources and optimize positive customer experience for UNOLS fleet. We actually spent some time writing up a charter last year, so this is directly from that. And what we do is basically work as good faith advocates to benefit the fleet over our private interests as ship operators. Next slide. So what did we do in 21? So the IMO cybersecurity requirements kind of upset the apple cart as far as what we thought we would be doing in 2021. So making sure all the ships were implementing those and passing their IMO inspections kind of took precedence over everything else. So we worked as part of the CIWG, which you just saw their presentation. We also continued implementing the next generation firewall. So if you remember from last year, the CyberRoam devices were end of life, and they were replaced with the Sophos XG. Sophos actually bought CyberRoam as a company, so they're somewhat compatible devices. And right now, those devices are running on the Oceanus, Armstrong, Thompson, and Atlantis. For you ship operators that are listening, if you're interested in installing a Sophos, feel free to contact us and we'll help you out. And we will continue to work with Research SOC, which you learned about. Sorry, my toddler just walked in the room. We'll continue to work with Research SOC and to get the next generation firewall in place. So we also updated the internet use policy and raised the daily quota to 400 megabytes per day per user on research vessels operating under the HiSeasNet umbrella. And then we also work to keep the SatNAG wiki up to date with tips and infos and how-tos. Next slide. So the SatNAG wiki, it's a web-based documentation. John Haverlax did great work getting the cybersecurity information and the root documents for the IMO cybersecurity regulations on there. So I recommend going over there and checking that out. We've also added some documentation on the Sophos upgrades, telepresence and ship-to-shore solutions, and bandwidth management tips and tricks. We also have our internet use policy, which is effect on all the HiSeasNet ships, and some info on commonly used satellite system hardware. Next slide. All right, so taking a step back for the broader audience here, we'll talk about bandwidth management. So bandwidth management is controlling the amount of data that a single user or device can consume over a given period. But it also involves blocking inappropriate or insecure network access. And what it does is ensure that the very limited and expensive resource of satellite bandwidth is available to all the users and that it's being used appropriately. The next generation firewall should also incorporate traffic monitoring, which is also part of the IMO regulations. And so some terms you might be hearing are monitoring of north-south traffic, which is the information moving on and off the ship, as well as east-west, which is the information moving throughout the ship. And the goal of that is to detect and isolate problem users, as well as problem devices, and improve the network performance overall. And an important note is that the next generation firewall might not be just a box, and it may be an entire stack of technologies. And we're going to be working closely with Research SOC to kind of figure out what that will be. Next slide. All right, so again, for this broader audience, we want to talk about why the challenges that research vessel networks face, and why it's so challenging. And the first point is that it's a very complicated network environment, even if it was being implemented in an office building somewhere, with things like bring your own device, scientists coming on board with their own computers, their own mobile devices. The need to support every operating systems, Windows, Unix, mobile operating systems, embedded devices, things like that. We have permanent infrastructure for science, as well as permanent infrastructure for ship ops, and then a mix of IT and OT. So on the same network, you'll have scientists, mobile devices, and you'll also have ship control systems and valves and engine controls. So it's a complicated network environment. And also in a very short amount of time, just the explosive growth of network devices. So we've gone from simple networks to tier 2 or tier 3 data centers, and the definition of that would be redundant, fault tolerant, high performance, and now we need to be hardened against cyber attack. And also challenging is that every research vessel is different. Where there's some overlap and similarity, and there's a lot of commonly used devices, but as it stands right now, every vessel's network is quite different. And we learned a lot about that through the pilot program that Lee was just talking about. And then we also have limited time and personnel for upkeep. You get a couple of days in port in between cruises to do all your upkeep, all your patches, all your network improvements. And that's a challenge for most operators out there. Next slide. All right, so our goals for 21-22 are continue to deploy the Sophos XG firewalls. Again, we want to hear if you're interested in operating one of these devices. And that's for the bandwidth management. And we'd also like to rebuild the traffic usage metrics to find out how these vessels are using the available satellite bandwidth. We'll continue to work with HiSeasNet and the CI working group, and now Research SOC, and as the technical oversight for HiSeasNet and the technical oversight for Research SOC as far as the cybersecurity. And then we'll continue to maintain the user-facing SatNAG with fresh content. Next slide. All right, so again, feedback is needed and appreciated. What we'd especially like to hear from some of the regional and coastal class operators and science users. Our SatNAG email has been kind of quiet lately, and we want to hear feedback. We want to hear complaints. We want to hear the problems that you face. So please, either it would be great if you could ask during this presentation, but if not, email us. We want to hear about it. Next. All right. And that's it. And I made it through with my toddler in the room here. Thank you, everybody. And
It sounds like she's got a question, Eric.
Well done, Eric. And your daughter sounded like she was happy the whole time. So very impressive.
Right.
You, hi.
Thanks for a very great presentation. A lot of really good, solid information. Again, thanks for all your work too in the committee. It's great how it synchronizes what the CEI working group's doing. And next up, HiSeasNet. So it's all these important pieces are, thank goodness, are all in good hands. All right, any questions for Eric? Okay, super. All right, thanks. That takes us next to the next part of it is HiSeasNet with John Meyer at Scripps to give us an update on that program.
Hi, folks. Oops, let me get myself out of here. Everybody seeing that okay?
All good.
Very well.
Okay, great. So hi, I'm John Meyer from HiSeasNet over here at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, Information Systems Manager for the Ship Tech group at Scripps. A lot of people shouting out their websites, so I'll just give a brief mention here. We recently learned, some people are not aware that we did a major overhaul of our website that details a lot of the information here at hiseasnet.ucsd.edu. I'll drop a link in the chat after this talk as well, but I would encourage you to go there and read more than I'll be able to tell you guys here. So topics of discussion, we'll cover 5 different key points, some brief, some not, and that'll be personnel, what's going on with our hardware, COVID-19 and telepresence impact for HiSeasNet, what we've been up to since the last meeting, and what we're doing soon. So for those who don't know, Kevin Walsh has been the primary technical POC for a number of years, and this past summer, he actually made the decision to retire and follow his passions. So he's just as busy as he's ever been, but he's no longer working with HiSeasNet, and we appreciate his service and off to bigger and better things for Kevin. So those who know him know he had a passion for the Boy Scouts, and he's able to fill a gap they developed during COVID. So he's think he's having a good time. Tom Lockwood, who will be giving the RV Tech talk on Wednesday, is actually off busy taking care of a ship today. So we were originally going to have him come intro himself to you all, but logistics got in the way. So I'm here instead, but Tom has been serving as our primary POC now, stepping in for Kevin. And for those who didn't know, Tom had actually been working in the background. A lot of the overhaul projects we're working, you probably had contact with or saw Tom on site. So he'd been working with us about 2 years before stepping in front of a train, so to speak, logistically. So Tom's been doing great, and we thank him for it. And then Lee, myself, Kenny, and Mark, you may have had interactions with all of us, still working the project, but more in the background than Tom. I've realized in talking to a lot of people that we deal with a lot of complicated hardware, that the outcome of which people just want to know, does it work? And the answer is yes-ish usually, but I figured it'd bear going over just a little bit of where we're at, because options are changing and the industry is changing. So bear with me here, try and whittle this down to the bare minimum technical details. We generally have 2 systems running on bigger ships at least, and that would be SeaLink Plus and Fleet Express. And those systems are somewhat different frequency bands, at least for some components of it. And a key detail here is that each system sort of has a backup unit as well as a high performance unit. And so for Fleet Express, the Fleet Broadband is sort of the backup. If there's a problem or there's a failure of the main link, there's a way to get online. There's a way for our commercial vendor to get in and conduct some administration from afar as feasible. Similar thing for SeaLink Plus, we've got an Iridium Certus on board, and that is designed for out-of-band management for our service provider to get in and reconfigure ships as they move to different parts of the world, which is more of an option in the commercial service days. What we're focused on in terms of performance, though, is the SeaLink component of SeaLink Plus and the Global Express component of Fleet Express. And generally speaking, when we're talking about radomes, that's what we're talking about, even though they're technically all radomes. We got a lot of radomes on ships. So, but the bigger domes tend to mean more performance, and that's we're focused on getting reliable, high performance, high reliability as much as feasible in a maritime environment. So a bit about our Sea-Link radomes. We've currently have 3 models in the fleet, sort of. Those are generally an Intellian V240M, which is our newest model. It's the one we started using in 2020. We've got several 2.4 meter Cobham 9711s, which we were installing from about 2015 and 2018. Perfectly good units. The reason we decided to switch vendors is the Intellian vendor, they were winning awards for some of their more recent SatComms. Nothing wrong with the Cobhams though. And a couple smaller KU band only 6000 series on a couple ships in the fleet. So sometimes we can end up talking about the 2.4 meter radomes a lot because they're on the oceans and global vessels and they have the biggest contracts, but do understand that we've got a couple other Sea-Link ships in fleet. Every ship that we support actually has a KA band dome and has a Fleet Express system of some ilk on board. We have 3 models there. Generally speaking, we have the pre-2020 Cobham Sailor 100GX. In 2020, we bought the Intellian GX100 HP. And in 2021, actually the tail end of 2020, we found out that the HP was no longer supported by our vendor, and the GX100NX HP is the new dome du jour. The exciting thing about that, though, is the NX means it has low Earth orbit compatibility. And so what that means is, we've got this little picture of work going on Robert Gordon Sproul that's happening this week, where you can have 2 domes on ship. You not only stand a chance of working around trying to look at the same spot in the sky and getting blocked by your engine stack, one of these 2 is going to have a solution. You also stand a chance of being able to shoot 2 very different spots in the sky for a low Earth orbit constellation, and you'll be able to actually track 2 different targets. So if you've gotten a new dome this year for Fleet Express, that NX capability means, fingers crossed, we've got some future proofing involved, specifically if we have a 2 dome or greater install. And jury's still out on how functional that's going to be, but in principle, we're stacking the deck in our favor for being able to leverage faster technology as it evolves. So skipping ahead to COVID-19 and telepresence, with everybody getting vaccinated, we started going to sea again, and what we saw was just a wild focus on network stability and increased throughput. And I think I've got it in a later slide, but it was our busiest expansion year in every year of the project. And our project's been around since 2002. And that was true in June. So by June 21, we had more expansions than we'd ever done in any single calendar year. Some notes here, though, with all these increased bandwidth requests we've been getting, we do want to point out that providers can often need 90 days or more of preparation time to ensure capacity and change link performance. And while we definitely have managed to get away with having significantly less time for, especially this year, where we've had some kind of late decisions about increasing bandwidth. So far, so good, but best practice, 90 days notice is always appreciated, shall we say, but not only my team, but the providers that we work with. They've been very flexible with us during COVID, though. So sorry, I missed my point here, but yeah, we did have the most expansions this year. A significant portion of them was, again, I point you guys back to our HiSeasNet website, was our 4 megabit by 2 megabit on contract. In this case, it's actually fairly easy to notify our vendor that we want to do a link change. And because it's part of our provided contract, cutting over to that has been very easy. On top of that, that 4 megabit shore to ship, 2 megabit, oops, we got a typo here, ship to shore. that's a committed information rate. We have a little bit more bandwidth on top of that as a maximum information rate. And while it's not a one-to-one, it's not apples to apples, it is probably the closest many users have seen to cellular levels of throughput, a cell phone levels of throughput for like LTE or something. And it also passes the threshold of baseline minimum requirements for Zoom and other similar telepresence. So for extending the knowledge base off ship in real time, being able to coordinate and have discussions or presentations like we're having here with colleagues that are not part of the research mission on vessel, that's been a significant game changer. And it was because of the affordability, on contract, ease of asking for it. That was one of the drivers of why we had so many expansion requests this year. So happy to answer more questions on that if you have them, but I'll wait for the end on that. Similarly, if you're going somewhere where research goes and most others don't, specifically that's the Southern Indian Ocean or the Southern Pacific Ocean, there's really sort of a dearth of options for communications there, but there are some, but in those circumstances, we're communicating early and working with us to make sure we're planning well ahead is definitely better outcome. The other thing we've been pointing out all year, because some ships, so we'll talk about this a bit in detail later, but some ships have blockage on one system or the other, maybe not both at the same time. We've been recommending you think about expanding Fleet Express. We've got contract options that can bring the performance of Fleet Express up to 10 megabit shore to ship and 5 megabit ship to shore. And again, that's sort of in the realm of this 4x2 we're talking about on our C-Link setup. Can be useful, but again, advanced planning, highly recommended. So a little bit about 2021. We did 30 bandwidth expansions this year, so let's kind of jump around here. And we relocated 17 radomes or installed them. I think it was only about 3 relocations, so about 14 brand new installs. And that was second only to 2020. So since we took on the secondary satellite network project in 2020, despite a global pandemic, we've been pretty busy in hardware overhaul. We've been deeply concerned about stability and reliability of, as Eric was saying, the north-south connection for the ship, the satellite communications path. And that was something we were definitely wanting to focus on improving. And I don't have a direct stat right now, but we can see the end of the tunnel here, and we'll be the amount of overhauls that are left to do in the fleet to get us up to sort of a modern standard of SatComms equipment are diminishing, and so the pace of that we have to work compared to 20 through 21 is going to diminish as well. We're excited about that. I sort of alluded to the rest of this, but yeah, key detail here is because we're working with commercial vendors these days and not limited to our own ground station, that has a lot of upsides, meaning we have a lot of options that we can reach for. There are some downsides, mostly in the vendor deciding to move a ship to a different satellite when they weren't expecting it, and some lag time. So some change for SatComms in general that we had in 21 was we've completed migration of all vessels that had been using the traditional HiSeasNet ground station at UC San Diego to commercial C-Link Plus service. And Thompson, we started in 2020, but that kind of continued on into 21. Sikuliak, Sally Ride, and Atlantis all got a treatment mostly early in the year, and then Atlantis just before they got out of shipyard. For Fleet Express, we actually also had Oceanus migrate to a solely Fleet Express setup. So we deinstalled their aging C-Link setup, did a dual dome Fleet Express, and we really got some good experience in watching an install like that work. We also had one get installed on Sikuliak at the same time. And last week, working on doing that on Thompson with Atlantis coming out of yard. We also had that. So we also were able to tackle Roger Revell last month. So we've been able to do significant upgrades to Fleet Express radome systems, making sure they have full sky view, and run them as dual domes where needed. And Oceanus was one of our first. It was a good test run. Sorry to be seeing that we're going to get the use out of that install that we're getting, but was a great start. And Rachel Carson, just to add on there, they still have their Global Express radome, but we are going to be able to get them running quote Global Express, and that's due to the structure of the vessel, as just well as the size. These domes we're talking about are 1 meter. It's been a challenge to find a good home for the 1 meter dome on Rachel Carson, but we're working through that. Slow burn. So one of our passions is high availability, and for satellite communications, what that really means is I got to have some dome for a geostationary setup at least that can see a particular spot in the sky. And if something's in my way, no matter what it is, I probably better think about having 2 domes so that one or the other dome can have a full sky view. And then in a little below decks piece of equipment, you configure which dome is the thing that's looking at the sky for certain azimuths of the ship. And so that's something that our sponsors have been supportive of since we started leaning into that in 2020. And as I sort of alluded to last slide, we were able to tackle Oceanus, Kuliak, Atlantis, Ravel, Thompson, and coming up Kila Moana for a dual LEO capable Intellian GX100 NX HP radome on all these vessels this year, which is fantastic. It's some of these were kind of by luck working with the ship operators on the schedule, but we're excited about that. We've also managed to ramp up a couple installs on ships where we're repurposing equipment that's been in fleet elsewhere. So for Sproul, we have an old dome, the old Sailor model, and because we've been amassing a few of those, we can either scrap them or stick another one on Sproul. So we've chosen to see how important dual domes are on smaller ships. Based on experience we had this year, we actually did have a kind of mowing the lawn cruise where it was pretty disruptive to network stability. And so we're excited to see how that system functions. It's a project being actively worked on right now. And a little bit bigger of a ship, working with Hugh Sharp on a dual dome setup. For those who know Sharp, you know, they got that big kind of catwalk on top of the ship, and that's fantastic for a lot of things, but for, and one of them is blocking internet connectivity. So they've got a significant percentage of blockage due to that catwalk that's quite a bit larger than most ships in the fleet. And so when I started talking to John Swallow over at UDEL about doing a dual dome setup, he was pretty excited. It was fun to work with those guys. They drew up their own plans on how we can put a second dome on, and we're going to be taking action at the beginning part of 22 on getting those domes, getting the second dome incorporated. And because we upgraded Ravel to a dual dome NX setup, where we've pulled Ravel's non-NX dome and are shipping that over to Sharp to get them dual dome capability. Excited about that. And this one's a little bit less exotic. Should have popped a picture in here, but we did the Neil Armstrong technique of getting the GX100 HP moved up to the top on Sally Ride, which is significant improvement for that install. So no dual domes needed there because we moved the dome to the top. Lots to go over, but I think I'll save it for the questions. We also did a top of ship upgrade for Atlantis and a dual 2.4 meter LEO capable dual 2.4 dome on Kuliak this year. Busy year. Some challenges we had is obviously, like everyone, COVID-19 impacted us, and sort of that's two-pronged problem for us. One was it dramatically increased the need communicated to us by multiple parties of, in this day and age, it has got to be online, and it's got to be reliable. I got to be able to get done what I need to get done. There's limits to what we can support, both due to finances and satellite infrastructure, but I think we're making progress. The other, bits and bobs we had was the travel and shipping, et cetera, were more challenging. So doing all this work that I just highlighted took a lot of extra work that we didn't plan for to flex and pivot when we had COVID issues. All the ship operators we worked with were super flexible and worked with us. And, you know, my hat's off to everybody involved in one of these major upgrade projects. It's a lot of work for everyone, and dealing with it during COVID was a challenge for everyone. But when I look, when I look back at what we actually were able to do, you know, it's a little, the day-to-day, you don't think about what you're doing, just, oh man, there's problems, I got to get them done. And they get done and you move on. And that's been sort of like that since lockdown started for us, really. And just now we're starting to have sort of an ebb. I mean, with some of the stuff happening through December and January, a little bit not, but following that, we're going to start to see an ebb in some of these operations. And, you know, everybody who's been working with us, everybody knows how difficult things have been. And so thanks to everybody. But we did not have super major failures this whole time, and I'm still stunned about that. So we also had a problem. This manifested a couple times where Marlink, who's our vendor for both C-Link as well as Fleet Express, but this was a C-Link problem. They had communicated about the fact that they were adopting a new modem. They were going from iDirect to NewTek for those who care. And the specifics of that were not made super clear to us. And the way we found out about it is we started having ships go to weird research areas, and they'd say, oh, well, that ship's not ready for a NewTek network. And so we first saw this manifest with Thompson, and this was a big bummer because this was one of those cruises where the criticality of having off-ship expertise participate was pretty high. And we got handed to us a link budget that just wasn't going to cut it in terms of the throughput was fine, but it was pointed at such a low spot on the horizon. The motion of the ship just precluded it from being very stable. And we slogged through that for several weeks. We eventually got the vendor to figure out an alternative solution. But I wouldn't say that went perfect for anyone. Fast forward to more recent times, we sort of had a similar issue with, instead of going a little bit too far east or west, we went a little bit too far north in Sikuliak. And knowing what we knew about the NewTek network being a problem for some areas, we had warned Marlink about this. But punchline is there's a bunch of fishing vessels that are all still on iDirect modems, and identifying a resource that was going to be able to deliver NewTek network to Sikuliak at higher latitudes that's close in longitude to kind of get as far north as you can was a problem. Marlink was able to work with a competitor of theirs to buy some spectrum and come up with a, you know, I won't say it's the best solution ever, but come up with something that's better than just being offline for that system. And so that's progress. And I think we've been through the ringer a few times with Marlink on if we're going somewhere weird, make sure they're aware of it. And so actually Thompson's going back to similar, the same operating area, the East Pacific Rise, next year. And we're currently in discussions with Marlink about making sure that there's a better solution than we got this year in January for the cruise that had the problems. We've also had some hardware issues crop up, notably on Sally Ride and Ravel. So for Sally Ride, it's sort of an aging system starting to show its age. Just found out this morning, actually, that we've got a component failure, a significant one. The bearings that rotate the dish around are in need of replacement. And so that's not, we don't have to take the dome off the ship to fix it, but it's a couple days worth of work kind of thing. So it sort of leans into our general plan that we've been adopting. Don't think I went over it too well in this talk, but generally speaking, we lease where we can and buy where we can to try and do a 5-year cycle on equipment because, because that's what's recommended by Marlink. And that's generally what we've seen is that when systems start to get 5 to 7 years old, the amount of repair they need might be worth, they may not be worth keeping on the vessel in terms of stability. We also had a surprising new equipment failure on Roger Ravel, and it was also a surprise because the reaction from the PI was, if this ship can't be online, it's useless to me, and pull the ship back in to fix the internet so I can do my research, which I've seen in other environments, but I think that's the first time we've seen show up in the ARF like that. So fortunately, we were near enough to port that we came in and in this circumstance, we actually had to have a field engineer come down from Long Beach, California, about an hour and a half drive away to service the vessel. But the fix was in the spares kit that was on the vessel for leased equipment. And while it was no fun for anybody to go through, in our mind at least, it's definitely a success story of the leased equipment that you have to lease a spares kit when you get it, was able to have a quick turnaround for this equipment that failed, and awesome. So certainly for everybody living through it, it took more time than initially expected. So a little bit of learning curve to do. This is one of the downsides of commercial service is there's, especially with the leased equipment, we have to wait for a field engineer to come from somewhere. And that was the case here. So while we did have some of my staff report to the ship and try to diagnose early problems, that became evident pretty quickly it was a field engineer problem. And then the answer
come
was,
on, John. Wrap it up.
What? Sorry, Jim, you had a comment?
No.
Okay. Fleet Express, we were excited to get dual GX domes on Oceanus, but we did have a number of situations where we had a difficult to diagnose problem where different cutting over to the different domes was a problem. So talking to Andrew this week, I think we've finally got that nailed down, but intermittent problems was difficult to diagnose for a while. For Ravel, it was one of the last installations we did where we only had one GX dome, and we got 50% availability or less at times. And that sort of installation was just not a very useful install for Ravel. And for Sproul, we did have a mow on the lawn cruise where we hit the perfect example of where not having dual domes can cause a problem. It was 3-hour lines or something, 15 minutes of disruption every time we turn, sort of thing. Big problem for the folks on board. So that's what we've been doing. We're excited about the future here. And the big news on our end is we've been approved to pursue a 4 times bandwidth increase. So we're currently pursuing that, and couldn't be more excited. The current plan that we expect to go through, but we are in the final stages of going through all the bureaucratic steps to confirm, is that 2.4 meter C-Link systems will get a baseline of a committed information rate of 4x2 megabits on a regular basis. So no more 4x2 expansions. We're just 4x2 all the time on C-Link if you have a 2.4 meter dome. Currently in fleet, there's no ships smaller than an Ocean class that have a 2.4 meter dome. So it's Oceans and Globals that will be getting that upgrade. For Fleet Express, we're getting a 2x2 megabit. So even both ways, ship to shore and shore to ship. And
Hey, Lee, we are 15 minutes over, I think, what our end time was supposed to be. Could we do a higher level summary for future plans?
Sure, no problem. So this is basically it. So I don't think we need to go over a lot more. Covered some of them. We've got some other plans for some nice to haves going forward. And if there's any questions about any of the specifics in here, I'm getting Alice a copy of this and can answer them out of band, or if any items that's gotten anybody's attention, I'm happy to take questions, but that's basically it. Sorry, I had not noticed the time. Go ahead, Jim.
I just got a quick statement that lest we forget that the first proposal to do this was John Urquhart way back when, right, John? So let's not forget where this all started. And sometimes you got to keep the good ideas coming. That's all.
That was back in 1990.
Well, that's a while ago.
Look at us
31 years success story.
Nice. We will be sure to get this online as soon as possible. So
yeah, and I have a couple edits. I'll send you the latest, Alice. This version here. Yep.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Are
John.
there any other questions? Sorry. Oh.
No, go ahead, Alice.
I don't see any other questions. So go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks, John. A lot of great work accomplished in the last year by your team, despite COVID-19 and all that. So it's like you say, you just grind through every day and you look back and go, wow, we got a lot accomplished. So congratulations. Thanks for all the hard work. Looks like the initiative to go to a commercial provider has really paid off, getting good service these days. So thanks very much. Anybody has other questions, they can reach out to John directly, obviously, and we'll get the presentation posted shortly. Because we're just out of time, I would also remind everybody we're back up next Monday, the 1st of November at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And next Monday, we're going to talk fleet renewal updates. So we'll be talking about midlife updates, the last of those. And we'll talk about Alvin Regional Class Program, the Langseth plans, and what NOAA's doing. They're doing a couple of ship acquisitions, so should be pretty interesting to hear where they're at in their projects. Any last comments, questions before we go? Thanks, everybody. Good to see you, and have a great week. And we'll see you in a week, next Monday.
Thanks, everybody.